All right. About a year ago, I was interested in getting onto LinkedIn, actually a bit more than a year ago, getting into LinkedIn in a much bigger way. And one of the people I met there was Anthony English. And he actually happened to be one of my like way back followers on my YouTube channel. And he finally reached out like after 10 years or something. And he said, "Hey, Gideon, I know a few people on LinkedIn. I can connect you. I can help you a little bit," because he's been on LinkedIn a bit longer than me. And one of the people he introduced me to was the lovely lady I'll be talking to today. And at the time, of course, I was so new to LinkedIn, I didn't know anything about anybody. And I think the person I'm talking to today, I forgot to ask her how many followers she had, but she had a decent following. But something interesting happened since that time. So I connected with her. About a week ago, I looked somehow at her profile again, and boom, it's like 85,000 followers on LinkedIn. And the last time I looked, it was right about, I don't know, 30,000, maybe even less. So something happened during that time that just made her shoot through some incredible barriers. And today I'm going to be talking to her about that, how she did that. This one of the things she does really well, which is using content to grow your influence online. But not only that, creating content that actually converts into leads and sales and actions from people. And that's something that I'm really, really interested in. So if you haven't met me before, my name is Gideon Shalwick. I'm the founder of Splashio. We're a company that helps you get your videos ready for social media. There's much more that we do, but that's the core essence of it. And I do these interviews with people that I find interesting and people that I think can, well, it's interesting. It's people that I think can help our audience at Splashio, but also people that I think can help me. So it's a bit of a double purpose there. So I'm really delighted to introduce you to my wonderful guest for today, Chantel Soumis. Chantel, how are you? And welcome to the call.
I'm awesome. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, it's great to have you here. And like I said in my introduction, it's been a very, very interesting journey by the looks of it from the outside for you over the last year or two since our good friend Anthony introduced us way back when. I can't remember exactly when the introduction was, but I wanted to ask you, when we had that introduction, I think it was maybe a year and a half ago. Do you remember where your subscriber rate was sitting at, or your followers?
I think you're about right. I think it was around 30,000, somewhere around there. It really is just consistently climbing. Sometimes it's super slow and maybe there's 5 or 10 people here and there, but I feel like the higher your follower count gets, the slower it looks to grow. Does that make sense? Maybe
Right.
because the milestones are bigger that you're focusing on.
Yeah. So tell me, I'm very curious about this as maybe our introductory question, and maybe I think some of the other things that I really want to get to will shine through this question as well as you talk about it. But take me through it. What actually happened? What's been happening with you over the last year or so since we've had that initial connection that has something's happened and that's allowed you to shoot through the roof, so to speak, and break some incredible barriers? Would you want to share with
Yes,
us what's
well,
happened?
absolutely. So a lot of that has to do with preparation. So when I decided that I was going to take my career to the next level in 2019, I created a content strategy that I could outline in terms of video content, written content, an article, and upcycle that like crazy. So I did all of this in late December, and I filmed 20 tips in 2020 was the title, right? 20 and 2020. You had to do something with 20. And bulk created it because I'm a busy lady. I'm running a business. I have a virtual learner, which that's a whole nother story, right? And a lot of other things, chronic illness, speaking, so many projects. So that bulk creation is everything. And when I talk about creating content, it's really important for me to keep my personal brand front and center and have my messaging aligned with that. So anything that I create content about, it also generates business in the back end. I don't have to figure out, I need to book 5 hours on Saturday to do content creation if I've already done it and it's out of the way. So that's why I believe in bulk creation. And that's why things really remained consistent throughout the past year in growing exponentially. Now, I should also mention that this growth happened without going viral once. I've never gone viral. And let me define that for you. Everybody's version of viral is different, but on LinkedIn, my definition of going viral is over 100,000 views on one post. And I've never hit that. But the great thing is that the engagement rate to view ratio, so how many people like and comment versus how many people view it, is extremely high. That ratio is extremely healthy. So my following is very engaged, which is the benefit that you get growing exponentially online, right? Because there's a lot of people who have hundreds of thousands of followers, but only a few likes here and there. And I think you can really see that from a bird's eye view, and it shows you who's really the authentic creators on the platform, who are really going above and beyond to deliver ultimate value. And then those who are just creating just to create and just to be seen.
That's beautiful. So let's take things back a little bit, because one of the things that really caught my attention as I was preparing for this interview was there are a few things that I actually found out about you that I didn't know, and I haven't known, since that initial introduction, and partially, because of my lack of, research previously, but maybe some other reasons. But one of the things that I discovered about you is that you've actually been through quite some experiences in your life, and when you were in your 20s, you discovered that there were some chronic health issues that you had, and you've been able to push through that. One of the things you mentioned on your website was that I think you lost sight in one of your eyes, and you had some issues with hearing as well, and all related to which I didn't know. This was new to me, that you had multiple sclerosis. Sorry, it's a bit of a tongue twister.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. So take me back a little bit, and in terms of your backstory, and because there's always a backstory, right? You've got a ton of success now here with building an incredibly engaged audience on LinkedIn, but surely there's some other reasons behind it as well. I'd like to find out a bit more about that. What's been happening to get you here today, and what's driving you today, and why are you doing what you're doing?
Ooh, good question. So I decided to join LinkedIn because I was desperate for a role, right? I was a new job applicant. And I was just diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at this time, right after I had a baby. And the thing about MS, which is basically an incurable, non-terminal cancer of your nervous system, it affects everybody differently. It's so hard to diagnose, and there's no way to give you a prognosis of where you're going to be in 5 years. So when I was impacted by this new illness, I had lost my vision in both eyes originally. I lost my ability to walk. I lost my ability to care for myself. Everything was hit. Even the simple things like your heart beating. I developed heart murmurs and breathing. Like I would lose my breath because my brain wasn't telling me to breathe. And then I had to go, I was unemployed at the time because I'd lost my dream job. Yeah, this is like just a snowball effect of bad news. And I had to apply for a job with a disability now, because not only was I requiring reasonable accommodation because of my accessibility needs, but also because I wanted to make sure that people knew that I was still strong. I would be able to get things done, but I need special accommodation to get there. And that's when I started creating content on LinkedIn, because I was so frustrated by the application process. Here in the United States, when you submit your proposal or your resume, you create this equal opportunity employer survey, and you check a little box that says, I'm disabled. And require reasonable accommodation. And every time I had submitted my resume, I never heard back, ever, checking that box. And I was, of course, frustrated as a new mom, unemployed. My husband was unemployed at the same time for other reasons. And I went to my MS community, my community of people with multiple sclerosis. And I said, what should I do? I'm desperate. I don't know what to do. No one will hire me. I apply for things I'm way underqualified for, way overqualified for, and things that are the perfect fit. What should I do? And the overwhelming response saying you should really just give up and apply for Social Security and disability assistance right now was astounding. And for me, as a 25-year-old new mom, I would not accept defeat. I was kind of shocked by it, and I grieved in it, and I licked my wounds for a little bit. Don't get me wrong. I took my time to grieve. But all in all, it was really this fuel to the fire to really keep burning and try to figure something out. And so that's when I created content on LinkedIn, and I shared about the beauty of the world when you have everything ripped away from you. How much more beautiful the world is. Like having my eyesight come back in one eye, I can see my son's green eyes again. I can see the beauty of even a cloudy day, because the clouds are different every single day if you pay attention to those little details. And people started to love that gratitude and that fresh perspective, as well as how I could play on the strengths of maybe I don't have one eye, but I have more attention to detail than I've ever had in my life. And there's so many other ways that you make up for those disabilities as well. So that's why I call myself differently able, not disabled. And then I started my own company too, because the more I was putting myself out there and the more I was creating this content, the more people were interested in talking to me. And then they said, oh, you're a marketing expert. I have a project for you. Will you help me with that? And then I was able to deliver. So this whole organic, everything on LinkedIn was so organic. It wasn't intentional at first. But now that I know what I'm doing and what works, it's all intentional.
It's fascinating. And it's also interesting how you've mentioned the little word gratitude in there, in spite or maybe because of the difficulties that you've been having with MS, and like getting your vision back. And do you only have vision in one eye at the moment? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, so some people go, "Wow, lost vision in one eye. That's terrible." But your take on it is, "Wow, I got vision back from one eye now. I can appreciate the color of my little boy's eyes again, and see again." And there's a reason for gratitude there. I think that's, for me, that's a key thing towards any kind of success, is being able to have that attitude of gratitude. Before we get into some of the LinkedIn kind of stuff, I want to ask you about that, because I think that's huge. You've been able to build gratitude into your life, from what I can tell, even in spite of, or perhaps because of, the health issues that you've been having in the past, right? But there are so many folks out there who might not be having health issues, but still are struggling with something like gratitude. And maybe there are people who are not well, and they're also struggling with gratitude. What's your secret? What have you done to be able to bring gratitude more into your life, and how has that helped you do better at what you're doing right now?
Oh, so when I was diagnosed with an incurable disease of my brain, I started to study the brain. And my dad, I'm one of those very blessed people whose parents, their family's everything. And my dad is my biggest fan. And I remember him sitting down with me one day when I was really struggling. I was really struggling to find hope in the world, because through that diagnosis process, it's so easy to grieve and get stuck in that victim mentality. And my dad said, honey, sit down here. And he sat me down and he said, the brain is magical. I don't know if you know this, but the brain can be rewired and re-engineered. And we're just scratching the surface on identifying the extreme powers of what we have in our brain and how we can use it to our advantage. And he introduced me to something called neuroplasticity. And I studied neuroscience as much as I possibly could, study after study, influencer after influencer, research method after research. And I found these exercises to control your thought processes so that you could manipulate every single thought that came through your brain and make it work for you, not against you. So where I had this brain fog, and I mean, I couldn't even answer easy questions like, what's your name? It would take me 5 minutes to respond. I was that destroyed up there. And being able to take every negative thought, which we think a lot of bad stuff. I don't know if you know this, but
Yep.
there's a lot of bad stuff. Yes. I mean, everything from like, oh, it's so cold outside. Really? We're going to complain about the cold or the heat? Come on, it's a beautiful day. It's another great day to be alive. The sun is shining, the birds are chirping. So taking every tiny little negative thing and forcing it into a positive and seeing the silver lining. And then I would play a game with myself and I try to find as many positive things as I can. Now, this irritated the heck out of my husband, who can see this like irritatingly positive person. I'm so bubbly as is, but I was never that positive, and I never really had empathy before this either. So, being able to understand that the brain is this magical thing, and we can control our thoughts, we can control our emotions. It was a total turning point for me. So I started to follow people like Dr. Joe Dispenza and other people that really encourage mindfulness and meditation. And I meditate every single day. Those breathing techniques are critical. And I really do attribute not just the mindfulness and the gratitude, but also healthy diet, because I am a massive beast, like an anxious, angry monster when I eat sugar, and I hate myself when I do that. So it's really right. It's a holistic approach. We have to be more intentional about what we do for ourselves.
So tell me about your eye, because that really piqued my interest, because you lost sight of both eyes and then you got it back in one eye so far, right? So did you use neuroplasticity in that particular case to help you get vision back in one of your eyes?
That's a good question, because it's so hard to place value on all the different things that I did, the different changes that I made. So what I can say is that the nerves, so what the vision loss was from optic neuritis. You have so many nerves that you are born with that die over time or through traumas. And optic neuritis is very common in people with diabetes as well as neurological disease. And it's very rare to hit two eyes. It usually just hits one. So they were pretty surprised when they found out it was in both eyes. And I really think I also started having seizures as well as many other side effects. I mean, it was bananas, but the seizures I noticed were substantially controlled specifically by diet. So I know I don't want to be that woo-woo person that's all, go meditate, do yoga, eat granola, but right. I really do. It helped me so much. It helped me so much. And what I did was I did like that standard keto diet because it was supposed to be the best thing to fight inflammation in your brain. And after 1 week of doing that diet, I was able to walk around the block for the first time since I was diagnosed.
Wow.
Yeah, massive. So diet, exercise, mindfulness, meditation, all of that is so important just for ourselves, but also the people around us, right? Because our loved ones have to deal with us too.
Yep. So it sounds like it was, when it comes to neuroplasticity, it was more a case of looking at the whole being, the whole body, not necessarily just one part of your body, like trying to improve the nerves just around your eye with your mind, that sort of thing. It was more of a holistic approach. How can I heal the whole body so that it lifts everything else as well? Is that a more accurate way of looking at it?
Yes, the goal was to reduce the inflammation as much as possible by controlling what those inflammation triggers were, right? So although I'll never get my nerves back in my bad eye, I only have so much in my good eye. So if I do get optic neuritis again, it would be really bad. But let's keep our fingers crossed and keep the mindfulness, the diet, the exercise, the whole holistic picture in focus, because that's what you get out what you put in, right? What are you going to get out of this? It's whatever you put in. So if you want a health out of your body, you have to put in healthy things, nurture it, love it, take care of it.
Beautiful. So, the part of the reason I'm asking that is obviously it's beneficial from a health perspective, but if you're not healthy, you can't do anything else. Like you can't be a mom, you can't be a dad, you can't be a brother or sister. You can't. It's very difficult to be useful to society if you're unhealthy. And it's you essentially become a bit of a drain. But when you're healthy, then you can take care of yourself and you can become interdependent and support others too, which is just an amazing part of life. And I guess one of those things is to like yourself, to be active in business and to make a change and to make an impact through your business and through the ripple effect from that. Because one of the things you've got a really big interest in is with helping other people in the disabled community as well, and you being like a shining star and example from that. So health is definitely something that's really important. How do you think being able to bring up your health like that and your mindset has been able to help you with what you're doing, say, on LinkedIn and in terms of growing your audience there?
Oh, it's everything. It's so important, because if I'm not healthy for myself and I can't give back to my business or my clients, or I can't be a great mom, it's going to reflect in any of my content and any conversation that I have. Even the personal conversations. I mean, Anthony was a connection that I made, and here he's introduced me to you and a lot of other amazing individuals. And that wouldn't happen if I wasn't in a good headspace to have a strong conversation and let people in and let that authentic conversation just unravel itself. Does that answer your question? I hope it does.
And it's absolutely, absolutely. So, because that brings up another really interesting thing, which I think is really important for building audiences, the whole thing with authenticity. So, tell us a bit more about that. Is authenticity? What's your definition of that? And is it something you can engineer, or is it just something that you are? What's the deal on that?
Authenticity requires so much work. So when I went through it, pre-MS Chantel, I hated myself. I didn't want to be around me. So how could I expect anybody else to want to be around me? So when it comes to being authentically you, it requires a lot of work in the back end. It requires self-love. It requires confidence. The more confident and more love you have to give yourself, the more love you can give the world around you. So authenticity directly correlates to how big of a heart that you have and how you can show that to other people. Now, also, that means highlighting your flaws. So for me, and what has worked well with my personal brand, which is, my bread and butter, what I love to talk about, personal branding all the time. But what's worked for me is chatting about the chronic illness issues, because it's a big issue in our world. So many people suffer from chronic illness and mental illness, and it's preventable. A lot of this is preventable, whether you want to admit it or not. So having these conversations and being open about our weaknesses, but also making those weaknesses our strengths at the same time, is authenticity. For example, my biggest weakness is that I'm an empath. I am so empathetic now, and I feel emotion, and I pour emotion into a lot of what I do, which is a ultimate strength because I can relate to people really well, but it's also a big weakness because I can get distracted by those emotions, and it can come out in content and not be received well. So that's authenticity, what my definition is. Now, everybody's will be different, but if you want to build a strong personal brand and be authentic, it requires digging into those closets, pulling out the skeletons, and hanging out with them. They're part of your brand. Sorry.
Okay, so what would you say to someone who might be feeling that they're a little bit fake? Maybe they've doing the faking until they make it type of thing. And they have this desire to be authentic, but they can't get themselves to be doing that. They can't get themselves to be sharing those personal stories or weaknesses. What did you say to folks like that? What can they do to help break down those barriers and to let their true selves shine more and be authentic?
They should take a personal branding course. No, it would help. It would help.
Right.
I suggest that anybody who feels in that funk, like maybe that imposter syndrome, I think that's where we're going with this.
That's actually what I want to say. Imposter syndrome. I think that's the one I was trying to say. Yeah, that's it. How do they get rid of that?
So common. Yeah, it's something that I've dealt with too. And the best thing that you can do is find five people that you care about that are the closest to you, whether it's family, friends, spouses, your in-laws. But ask them, what are the three things they love most about you? Because the answers might shock you. And they're going to tell you traits that they appreciate about you, and they're going to share different ways that they describe you to people when they try to talk about you or share a story, and it's going to light you up. And those are the things that you can breathe into your personal brand so it can combat that imposter syndrome. The beautiful thing about personal branding is that you, Gideon, you're the only Gideon that's you with your story in the entire universe. How beautiful is that? You have so much to share with the world. So that should never stop anybody. Nobody should have imposter syndrome because the only competition is yourself.
Why do you think we have imposter syndrome?
That's a good question. I really think that imposter syndrome comes down to a fear of rejection. That's a big fear of mine that I've had in the past in trying to be worthy and not feeling worthy enough. Because if you don't feel worthy enough, or if you're trying to fake it till you make it to feel worthy and get that opportunity, it digs at you, right? What do you think causes imposter syndrome?
I'm very much aligned in your thinking there as it relates to your sense of worthiness and your search for significance. Definitely very much aligned with that. So, and that to me is one of the key questions. How do you help people to find themselves and to find their own worth? And I guess that's the next question that I have is, in terms of finding your worth and removing that imposter syndrome. How did you do that? How did you get to that? How did you come to the realization that you are worthy and that what you have to say is worth listening to? Surely there must have been some sort of a barrier that you had to break through, or did it just sort of click one day? Share a bit more with us on that.
It had to do with dropping shame. Because when you have an incurable disease like this and your body is hit on all of these different levels, you can't let shame get in your way. For example, the bias, the judgment, it's inevitable. People look at you differently when you can't walk. People look at you differently when you ask questions or you specifically recommend anything gluten-free, and if they don't have it, I'm sorry, you can't stay here because your body's going to go way out of whack if you get that in your body. So being able to drop that shame completely from the puzzle has been the absolute saving grace in the self-love and this progress of what I go through. Now, don't get me wrong, I have bad days. I'm not always positive. There are days when I sulk in the bubble bath and just watch my Netflix and zone out. Because that grieving it's a life cycle. You have to feel the pain because those pain and that bad day makes the good days and the beauty so much better. So it's important to, when you go through it, don't avoid the darkness. Just keep walking through it to get to the other side because the light's always at the other side of the tunnel.
Shame. That's a really interesting one. So I guess one of the first steps is to identify that there is shame and to acknowledge that. But do you have some tips on how to then drop it how to get rid of it. How do you move through that? Because that's an intriguing one for me.
So what has helped in the past has been working with people who also are similar thinkers. So with me, the biggest healing process was going to a support community that we have here for people with cancer. And we were able to joke about the really bad symptoms we were experiencing because we got it. We understood each other. And it was beautiful to finally be understood and appreciated despite those symptoms. Okay, so here's a couple, and I'm totally fine saying this and opening up about this, but one of the symptoms of MS, and it's also a very common symptom of cancer, certain kinds of cancer, is incontinence, because your brain stops working, your body and organs stop working. So there's like the peeing and pooping in your pants. I didn't think I was going to talk about this today. But when you do this as like a grown adult, you have to joke about it. You have to joke about it. Otherwise, you're going to be in this massive hole of sorrow and sadness and shame and self-pity until the cows come home. So that's the biggest thing that was a help to me, is having people that understood me and loved me and appreciated me despite the crazy symptoms that come on, and just joking through our shame, joking through the things that we hold as a shame puller. A lot of people's shame is like body image issues or weight, and working through that is a big piece of the puzzle too, because once you can drop that shame and you feel confident in your own skin, anything is possible. Opportunities just start flocking to you. It's beautiful.
That's huge, and thank you for sharing that. It's and being so real with us and authentic again. No, it's awesome. It's really, really awesome. So I want to bring this back to the content game now, because it seems to me that all of these things are kind of like below the surface sort of stuff, right? That allows you to create engaging content, and that's one of the things I really wanted to talk about. You on your LinkedIn profile, one of the talking points that you have for public speaking that you advertise is basically how to create content that converts. Does what we've talked about relate to that, and if so, how? Or are there some other things that involves creating content that converts?
Absolutely. So the authenticity is so important, because that's what helps people get connected to your personality. When you create content online, it's like tuning into your favorite Netflix series. After the third or fourth episode, or maybe the first season, you feel like you're family with the cast, with the characters. And that's no different than your social media strategy. When you create content consistently with your brand and you put it out there into the world, people start to feel like they know you. People will stop you in the grocery store and want to give you a hug, even though you've never met them before. That's the beauty of content that converts, the content that actually works. Now, you can't create content just because. I mean, you can if you want, but that's not how you create content that converts. You want to have a goal. What's your main goal, your main initiative for creating content? What is the service offering that's going to bring you the best results? So, for example, when I talk about titles, the power of creating strong titles, it's positioning me as an expert in copywriting and digital marketing. So whenever you create content or a strategy, it's important to have that goal front and center. What is going to be putting, the bread on the table? What's going to be helping you with that? Because if you don't have a goal and you don't have a strategy, it's like throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. Now, that includes all the authenticity, right? All of the personality, dropping shame, all of that comes in to make the perfect recipe for success in content on social media.
All right, so give me some examples here of a typical goal that someone might have for creating content. Would it be for getting a lead, getting a sale, or getting a hug in the supermarket? What's a good example?
There's so many great examples. Those all work.
Right.
So
I like the
Like,
hug one. I want to get more hugs in public. That sounds like a good
why
one.
not, right? Totally not quarantine friendly here, but afterwards we'll work through
Of
it.
course, of course.
So the lead generation side is important for me as a marketer because that's the easiest to track metric, right? You can track who comes in and the amount of calls that you hold each week. So the lead generation side is one thing. Another thing, so that's call me if you want to learn more about this, or message me if you want to, level up your life. If it's a life coach, I don't know. This is flying off the wall here, Gideon. Give me a
Right.
break.
You're doing great.
Also, another great goal is to build your influence, right? So building your influence online is not as measurable. However, you can encourage engagement, which then encourages growth. Because if you have people commenting and engaging on your content, your influence is going to continue to grow. So there's a lot of different goals that you can have, all the way from building influence to lead generation to lead nurturing, which is a whole nother piece, to client appreciation, where you can do testimonials and fireside chats with your clients to give them some recognition and love. There's a lot of different things that you can align with those goals.
Beautiful. Now, in terms of building that engagement and building that audience and building influence, like you say, there are, you can't just create one piece of content and that's going to do the job, right? It seems to me that, especially with the content game, consistency is a very big part of it. What do you do in your business to stay consistent and to stay motivated for constantly being authentic, dropping the shame, and creating the content and engaging your audience on a regular basis?
This network is everything. So your network is your net worth, right? That's how the old saying goes that I grew up hearing my dad say. And it's no joke. It's no lie. The people that you know really can funnel in so much business your way when they believe in you and what you do. So that's very important, as well as the preparing, right? So having batch recording, on December 15th and getting everything ready for 2020. And in the meantime, what I love to do with my network is I love to just jump on calls and brainstorm or mastermind and record the conversations. One of the biggest projects that we did this year, or we're doing, because it's only February, is we're analyzing what the entertainment industry does in creating their character development, and we're reverse engineering that to program it into personal branding, because we don't want to recreate the wheel, right? Same thing. And the personal branding's been around forever. So why have to recreate the wheel? So when we create these conversations, we click record, and then we can upcycle that content. We can take out little quotes and snip it into images. We can do so much with that. So that's other ways to create content that really continues and is fresh. Because when you batch record in series, it can get stale if you have 20 tips in 2020 or 21 tips in 2021. You know what I mean?
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally. So
repurposing. Yes.
Okay, so repurposing and basically batch recording or batch processing a lot of the work.
Absolutely. Yeah. That takes up so much time, and it takes all that time that is required on your calendar right on off, which is super helpful.
Beautiful. Now we're moving towards the end of our conversation here, Chantel. I mean, I would love to keep chatting much longer. It's so much fun. But there's one thing that struck me as well about your messaging on. I can't remember where exactly it was. Perhaps it was on your personal site, which my apologies, I forgot to share with our audience. This one here, is that showing? This one here, ChantelSoumis.com. Please go and check it out, everybody. But and we'll talk about that a bit more in a second. But one of the things you had on there was to help people create this fire that spreads around the world. If there was one thing that you could share with our viewers and listeners to help them create this fire that could spread around the world, what would you tell them?
I would tell them what I told you earlier. And that's that you are the only person with your specific story. You're the only person in the whole universe that has the lessons that you've learned. And if you could share that lesson to help other people, think about how magnificent that is. And I also want to add on to that by saying that everybody is differently abled. You don't have to be blind. You don't have to be immobile. You don't have to have different issues or chronic illness to be differently abled. Everybody is. And sometimes that limitation is a lack of self-confidence, or it's beating imposter syndrome, or so many, maybe being afraid of being a good parent. These limitations can hold us back so much. But what I want to encourage everybody is to own their story, own those flaws, own those limitations, and smash through them.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Chantel, tell us a bit more about what you specifically do. And, you've got ChantelSoumis.com, your personal brand, which is this one here. And you've also got your creative agency here, which is stardustcreative.com, that people can go and check out. Do you want to share with folks a little bit more about how you help them for building personal brands, and anything else you want to share here about how you help people?
Absolutely. So with Stardust Creative, what I started was when I created that process online, right? And I started sharing on LinkedIn, people were approaching me to help them with their marketing strategy. And then I ended up growing my team to really focus more on the branding pieces of it, because branding is really everything. It's storytelling, it's your content, it's your voice, your values, your culture, a way to engage employees and reward them as well. So there's a lot of different things that we focus on the personal branding and corporate branding side, as well as social media. Then there's also the personal branding side of myself, which is getting really meta here. I apologize. Is really just focusing more on the speaking side and the training. So corporate training workshops where we help people, executives, embrace their personal brands so that they can be a strong manager for their team, but also they can be a voice for the company in a strategic manner, which is what companies love when people hype them up, right? Getting your own team to hype you up is a great way to do that. And then also talking about the diversity and inclusion pieces of the puzzle by combating these stigmas and these biases that people seem to place on the disabled community. Because I know we've come so far with accessibility, but we have so much farther to go in terms of making places for disabled employees accessible to work. These people go through the unthinkable on a regular basis. They have to overcome so much just to get through the day. That think about how that resourcefulness can apply to your business and innovative thinking. It's magical.
So what's the best way of getting in touch with you, Chantel? I think you mentioned the email address before we started this call, and that there's something that you can help people with specifically with that email.
Yes, absolutely. Email me and the team at hello@stardustcreative.com. Happy to meet anybody anytime. Also LinkedIn me. Send me a message. Don't send me a connection request without a message, because that will get lost in the rest of them. But also I want to put this offering out there to people that if you're stuck in a funk and you have chronic illness or disability and you need help mastering your personal brand to get further in your career, at Stardust Creative, we give pro bono services to anybody in that situation, because I know how much it sucks. So reach out to me. We're happy to help.
That's really awesome. Chantel, this was just an absolute pleasure having you on the call. I learned so much from you. It was really, really fun talking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for creating the safe space to have conversations that really bring people to their fuller selves.
You're very welcome. And I can't wait to see what happens in the next year for you. I mean, the growth that you had in the past year, and you just look like you're on this incredible trajectory. So I can't wait to see what the future holds for you. So wishing you all the best.
Likewise, Gideon. Keep creating.
Thank you.